Today I will start, I have this kind of a provocative title, because I will argue that the SDGs, or the whole Agenda 2030 as it is now, as it is described now with the goals it has now, it is, as the title says, an unbearable lightness. It is not achievable. And I will try to argue why it is not and what are the changes we need to introduce in the agenda if we want really to achieve the goals. So I will start from this. This is now a picture that everybody knows, is taught and shown also in schools at every level. So everybody is aware of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with its 17 goals, 169 targets, and more. And it is based really on the concept of sustainability, that we should leave to future generations the availability of the resources we have today and the possibility to enjoy the same kind of life conditions or enjoyable life that we are living today, shared prosperity, and therefore being able to grow more. Now, one of the aspects of this agenda, I will come back on this, is sustainable, inclusive, and sustained growth, which I argue is an oxymoron. In other words, a contradiction. But I will come back to this at the end of my speech. Now, we are looking into health specifically. So we are looking specifically into SDG 3, which is, the idea is health for all at all ages, and I will add for all generations, also for the generations to come. In the words of Director General Tedros of WHO, the centerpiece of this goal is UHC, Universal Health Coverage. You know that there are many more goals or targets into the Health Sustainable Development Goal, so it's much more complete, but the international community has decided to focus more on UHC, so I will use UHC to enter into the subject and to show that among all the other targets, this is not achievable unless, we will see what this unless means, but we will look into the providing health care to all as, in other words, universal health coverage, as one of the lenses for my presentation. So when we look into the building blocks, as they are called at WHO, of the health system and the objectives, the goals of the health system, we will easily see that we will have these 6 building blocks. I'm sure many of you are familiar. So the steering capacity, leadership, the financing of the system, the governance of the system, the resources of the system, both human resources, financial and technological resources, and finally the service delivery, which in a healthcare system should respond to certain goals, like responding to the expectations of the citizenship, provide equity in access means everybody who needs services should be able to access services in the moment of need, and fair financial, in other words, if you want, equity in contribution, where everybody should be put in a condition and should contribute to the system in order to be able to access the system when in need. And efficiency of this system. This system should work, achieve the objectives, at the same time doing it with the best use of economic resources. And finally, this should provide health. But health is not the result only of the health care system. Health is the result of the overall health system, which means the result of policies in other sectors which have an impact on health, what we call healthy public policies. So for us it becomes very important to measure the impact on health of public policies in other sectors. When we think of economic reform or economic measures, when we think of the education system, when we think of the environmental commitment, when we think of industrial policies, we have to keep health in mind, and I would say argue health as a priority. Because health is really, if you go in the street and ask the people what is important to your life, they will tell you health before even salary. So here we have just a resume of the organization of the health system. And I will not go, for sake of time, I will not go into the details of all the aspects. You will find this in the paper that I will submit very soon to Medicus Mundi. So read the bulletin very soon. As soon as you receive the news online, please go through if you want to have more details about this presentation. Now, I will only focus later on human resources on one side and service delivery. But just as a summary, I would like to indicate how the other components, the other building blocks of the system are all under the influences of determinants which are external to the health sector. They are external to the health service system. So here specifically, altogether, if you want, the market, the way the socioeconomic system is organized. If you want capitalism or neoliberal economic order, they are all dominating, they are all the hegemonic forces on how the system, and when I say the health system, I'm not referring only to the healthcare system, I'm saying the health system, all the public policies and how they relate, overall global health governance, if you want. But especially also in the UHC, these forces have an impact on the governance of the system. For example, when you have international financial institutions imposing some macroeconomic measures, they have an impact on the healthcare system. And this is not only in developing countries. We all know about the 1980s, 1990s with the structural adjustment programs in many African or Latin American countries or Asian countries. This is also true in Europe, and the recent financial crisis with the European Union imposing macroeconomic measures on Greece, and we know the consequences: increase in suicides, less access to healthcare, increase in poverty too, and many other issues which are related with inequity. So external institutions influencing the way the system is managed and the decisions it takes. This obviously has a strong influence, a whole neoliberal approach on how the systems are organized, highly fragmented, privatized, regressive in financial terms. People have to pay out of pocket many of the services, at least a component of it, co-payment, and this is all inequitable and increasing disparities. And finally, we have an influence on the generation of resources, because also the financial resources are very much related to the fiscal system. If we have an inequitable fiscal system, then you will have an inequitable health service. If we don't have a progressive system in the fiscal grade, then you will have this reflected in your health system. You will not have equity in the way the system is financed. And the same, the market is very much influencing the way technology is produced, the way infrastructure to the system is produced, because everything is directed by the market, by the profit. The big investments also in research are made today on market basis. So if they produce return on investment, they are valid. If they don't produce return on investment, they will not be not even funded. So this is why we have neglected diseases, we have orphan drugs, and so many other things. And we have fundamentally people which are left behind. We have people who are excluded from the system because they are not of interest of the market. So, and then we have our role, the global development assistance in health people, which have contributed to fragment the system. We have introduced their own management structures. They have introduced their conditions, whether they are global public-private partnerships, whether they are bilateral agencies, whether they are NGOs or the churches or the many other actors. They all have contributed to make the system inefficient, unfortunately. On the micro scale, they may have good results and prove, including to be effective in having an impact in reducing a certain disease or in providing services in a specific district. But if we take it globally under a macro picture, then we'll see they have really produced an inefficient system and a highly fragmented system. But I will not go more into this. As I said, you can find more in my future paper. I will focus now specifically on two issues: human resources and health service delivery. So, human resources. We have, the WHO speaks of a lack of some 3-point-something million health workers in the world. So we lack resources. And the few we have, especially in developing countries, they migrate. So normally we will have a much stronger inadequacy of the system in poorer countries, with weak system, weak health resources. And we have an investment, let's say in Zimbabwe or in Tanzania, investment in human resources, and when they are ready, they go. They go from the rural area to the urban area first, and then from the urban area, they migrate to Europe, to the United States, to Canada, to Australia, wherever. So the investment was a loss, double loss for the country. So what can we do? Obviously, we can have more financing in the human resources sector and try to produce more, say, doctors. I will use doctors as an example, but this applies also for nurses and other technical people. We can finance more. We can look for more international financial support. It's one of the targets in the SDG 3. But this will not be enough. Why? Because we are still using an homogenized method, standardized method, in training our people. They are all trained in the same way. Now, I teach also in the first year course of the Faculty of Medicine of the University of Pavia, and when I ask my students, first year, what is your expectation? Why you choose medicine? They will all be ophthalmologists, orthopedics, cardiac surgeon, and so on and so forth. Why? Because the myth is what they see on TV, on the media. Do you know any hero in your series, TV series, who is a general practitioner or works in a community, possibly in a marginal community? No. You only have surgeons, super emergency, very smart people who find technological solution to a complex story, and this is worldwide. This is globalized. This is not Europe. Actually, it's mainly United States and then produced and seen in Europe. But this is the idea which is formed in the collective imaginary about medicine. That is a measure of success for somebody who is starting his career or her career in medicine. And then how are they trained? Okay, they are trained on the horizontal person. We are trained, I have been trained, to see a person in bed. Not a person where he or she is born, lives, works, and finally dies, which is the criteria of social determinants. So, if I'm trained that way, I'm only prepared to become an expert quality physician. Because I'm not trained to take to bring my work with the ethical mission toward the people who suffer in their daily life. Not in schools, not in factories, not on the street, where people die. The disease is not in the hospital. That's the ending point of the chain of disease. It starts at home. It starts at the place where you work. It starts at the place where you play if you are a child. Are doctors today prepared to be there where the disease starts, where the inconformity with life and stress starts, for example? Are they motivated to work in the most marginated communities? They are not. Their maximum aspiration is to work in a hospital. When I started my career and I decided to go, I wanted to go to Africa, I finally ended up in Nicaragua and Central America, and my frustration was that I had to dedicate myself to health education. Actually, today I know it was fundamental. But I have been trained for being in a hospital. I wanted to work in a hospital, not in a faraway community where I couldn't apply my knowledge. I had to restart. I had to understand the social determinants of health. So we are preparing in developing countries expert quality doctors. They want to go to Houston. They want to go to, I don't know, the Mayo Clinic somewhere. They want to come to Europe. They don't want to stay where they should stay. They don't even speak the languages of their, I don't know, Aymara, if they are in the highlands of Peru or Bolivia. They don't know the culture. How many doctors have been trained to give birth to a child with a woman in this position? But that is the most natural position to give birth. If you have been working in a community, you have seen this. If you are able to interact with that culture, you can understand it. But if you always have seen the woman in a gynecological position, which has been invented for doctors to work in front of the screen in the right position, then you are out. You are not able to interact with the local culture. And all this is not taught, not even theoretically with an anthropology course. So this was the first part. So our human resources are not adequate to provide equity, means being near to the people in need first. They are trained for elites. So this is one of the issues on which we have to reflect. And obviously, what is the solution? Changing the paradigm of resource training. Starting from the community, not starting from the clinical work. Not starting with physiology, microbiology, physics, chemistry. Send the people first year in the community. Spend 1 year in the community. Not at the end of the course, when you are not interested anymore in social service in many countries. At the very beginning, so that they understand if they want to be really doctors or not. Because they will understand immediately if you are ready to piss in a latrine, instead of doing it in a very elegant water closet. So this is really understanding the situation. But let's go now further into health services delivery. I said this was the second issue that I would deal with. Now, we have a problem of offer and demand. My management people would say this. Any system that works on offer and demand. Are we able to respond with right offer to the demand which we have on the health care system? We have a number of challenges today in front of us. One of these is aging. Aging is physiological. I mean, we can reduce the population, blah, blah, blah. But then we have to act somehow. Especially educating people, okay? But there we have to manage somehow to adapt to the change. Mitigation, we would call it in risk approach. But then we have a number of issues which increase the demand on the system, and we're doing nothing. And this is related to all the other SDGs. Greta, the little Swedish girl, is telling us climate change. Well, what are we doing with climate change? The news yesterday was that Mr. Trump said the gringos are out, the United States citizens are out, or the United States administration is out from the agreement, which means the main polluter, together with China, is out. Thanks God China remains. But this has an impact on health. So if we don't act on climate change, if we don't act on the preservation of the ecosystem, immediately, we will continue to drink microplastics, we will continue to drink glyphosate, we will continue to drink any kind of pollutant and eat it and breathe it, and obviously the consequences will be that we will have new diseases, or increasing the diseases we know. Cancer, neurodegenerative diseases. We have all the demonstrations, there is science behind this. There's nothing new, but we're doing nothing. At least the public policies are doing very, very, very little. So there we have to act if we want to reduce the impact on health. Demand. Food system. Please go into any supermarket in the world. I live half of my time in Mexico, and I tell you, I go to the supermarket, I find exactly the same problems that I have here, or wherever, even with the stronger United States culture, food culture, which is still different from the European one. Yeah? And you have any kind of junk food, and this is highest consumption. Mexico is among the countries with the highest diabetes incidence, and with the highest obesity incidence record, and they are the highest Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola and other soft drinks drinkers. No wonder. Yeah. So there is where we have to understand what comes from the system, the way we live, and what is pushed on us. And then we have responsibility which are in the healthcare system. The antimicrobial resistance crisis is related to this. And we have problems on the offer of services, which is pushed to be inadequate. All the technological push is toward having systems which cost more, but not necessarily provide more solutions. Very often the changes in our technology are mediated only by modernization, or if you want, obsolete planet obsolescence in our technology, for market profit, not for best results in clinical work. So, and then there are many other factors which have an impact on the offer. to conclude, the system, it has already been shown, 1972, in the famous report to the Club of Rome, that it is unsustainable. It was already foreseen in 1970s that the system would undergo a crisis around 2030. We are coming very, very near. And all the different measures, indicators that had been measured were showing the similar crisis, including the population crisis. There will not be an increase of population at some point. It will be a decrease, because obviously we will undergo all this crisis, lack of resources, pollution, and all these things will change the trend. And this is what, when we discuss about climate change, is what we are seeing. We are very near to the tipping point. So that we have a ticking bomb there that we have to take into consideration if we want to change. And this obviously has a very impact in here. What do we have to change? Well, we have to change the system, indeed. So sustainable and inclusive growth, and sustainable growth intended as economic growth measured with a GDP or GNI, that's not sustainable. That doesn't work. It's the system. We have the demonstration. We have all the data. Now, some people speak of degrowth. Call it as you like. What we have to change is the way we measure and the way we live the system. So this is the message. Finally, if we want to change things and produce equity, ensuring that the system is able to give the offer to the whole demand, we need to go to the causes of the causes. We have to modify an unfair system of life. If not, we remain with the rhetoric of invariable lightness go. So we need a utopia. We need a new utopia. Some people speak of a new social pact. We have in Chile millions of people in the streets asking for a new social pact. They were the first in experimenting neoliberal policies under the Chicago Boys consultants and under a military dictatorship. Now they say stop, because not even the right or the left, they gave the right answers. They remained in the same system. We need people who are able of disruptive thinking. This is strategical thinking. This means changing the system. How to do it? Well, this is something where we all have to work on this. But the present economic, social system, environmental system doesn't work. It only produces inequity. So a new utopia is a way forward. We need courage there. But the kind of society that I would like to imagine with you is inclusive, is cooperative, is participatory, is equitable, finally is ethical. It works for the common good. Thank you very much.